All right, so greetings, pioneers. My name is Keith Hassel, and I'm the Executive Director of Career and Professional Development here at Sacred Heart. Today, we're very fortunate to have a two-time alumni, Rebecca Badowski, who graduated with her undergrad degree in 2019 and her master's degree in 2020. So Rebecca, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Rebecca Badowski. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I graduated in 2019. I was also the president of the Psychi Honor Society in my time at Sacred Heart. I also just graduated virtually in May with my master's degree in elementary education.
Oh, congratulations. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
What are you up to now that you've graduated?
So I got a teaching job in June. I am a sixth grade teacher in Connecticut, and I teach all subjects. So math, reading, writing, science, and social studies. So I am a full-time first-year teacher in a very difficult time, but I am loving it so far.
Wow, that's great. And especially for your first year to be teaching during COVID, I'm sure you're learning a lot still, right?
Yes, learning every single day.
Oh, that's great. So we have a lot of students who are interested in becoming educators, but what does the actual day-to-day look like, especially when you're teaching so many different subjects? What does it look like?
So I would say that this job is definitely very all-encompassing. You have to love children. You have to love teaching. My biggest advice is you're always learning every single day. You always have to be willing to ask for help, which is something that's not always easy to do for people. But if you do that, it's extremely rewarding. It definitely is a more challenging career choice. I know a lot of people don't always see the nitty-gritty of what goes into educating, but it is a very rewarding career. So if you're interested in education, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to get into the classroom as soon as you can. Whether that's through Google Meet or in a virtual classroom or in a real classroom, just throw yourself in, and I promise you will learn so much.
That's great advice. Just gaining exposure as opposed to, you may think what the actual field is like, but when you're experiencing it, it may be completely different, right?
Yes, totally different sometimes. So that's really important. Yeah.
So even, through your undergrad degree, your graduate degree, maybe some of, your student teaching observations, were there any kind of maybe major factors that kind of led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest factors, and as cheesy as this sounds, is just Sacred Heart as a whole. Not only did I go there for undergrad, but I did complete my master's. And I think one of the biggest reasons for my success is my professors. One of the reasons I love the program so much is because our professors are educators. They were in the field, or they are in the field. They have real life experience. They're not just your professors, they're your friends and your mentors. I am so close with all of them to this day. They check in with me constantly. If it weren't for them, I don't know if I would be here right now, because a lot of them, made phone calls for me and things like that. So having such a supportive community at Sacred Heart was a really, really important part of my success. So definitely that would be the answer for that.
Wow, that's great. And that's actually a perfect segue to my next question. So, with Sacred Heart, it seems like it made such an impact on you and you as a professional. Let's say if you could go back to school, so whether it's undergrad or grad, do you think that there'd be anything that you might do a little bit differently?
I really don't. I think from the moment that I stepped onto the campus, I was fortunate where I knew what I wanted to do. For those people who maybe don't know what they want to do, again, my biggest advice is to, physically try it. So get into the classroom or whatever career choice you're looking at. That is really the best way, as opposed to maybe a lecture where you can really see if the career path is right for you. I also think that, I grew really close with the people in my program, with my professors. Again, having that community is so important. You go through the program together and you really gain lifelong friendships that will follow you throughout your life. So I would say I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think you have to have a really positive mindset, especially during this time. You know, you have to be okay with things changing, things not going your way. I know the end of my student teaching got cut short due to the school closings. And you know what? I made the best of it and it ended up working out just fine. So I think having a positive attitude, always willing to learn, and if you love what you do, things will be a lot easier. So.
Wow, that's great advice. And let's say, I'm sure you could identify with this also. We have students, whether they're undergrad or they're grad, and they might be about to graduate or they're applying to grad school. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed. I'm sure you know that feeling. What kind of advice do you have for them? Maybe those who kind of can't see the light at the end of the tunnel in their profession. What would you, now that you know what you know, what would you like to tell them?
Yeah, I would think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And, I've been there where, you're very overwhelmed. You feel like you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. One of my professors actually had the best advice for me, and I still think of it to this day. And before we started student teaching, he said to us, right when you can't take it anymore, it's over. So right when you think you've had enough, you can't do it anymore. You're like, oh my goodness, this is so challenging. That's when things start to slow down. And, especially with the education program, there's so much that goes into it. There's your courses that you have to pass, but there's also Connecticut guidelines and state guidelines. That's certifications, tests, EdTPA, which is a huge portfolio that you have to complete. I've talked with many undergraduates, and although it seems like a monster, if you take it bit by bit, it's seriously, when you're done, you're like, oh, I remember having that moment where I said to myself, that was it? Okay. It seems so big in the moment, but if you just follow, your professor's advice and, have good time management and good organization and a positive attitude, something I teach my students to this day, if you have a positive attitude, things will go a lot smoother. So although it seems like a big monster, right when you can't take it anymore, it's finally over. I still have moments when I walk into my classroom in the morning and I think back to May, where, it was such a difficult time and I didn't know what was going to happen, and was I going to get everything done, and was I going to graduate, and was I going to get a job? And here I am in my own classroom with my own career. And I think, that was something that it was a really big moment for me, where I sort of realized everything works out. I think the biggest thing is working hard and having a positive attitude.
Well, Rebecca, I can tell you that's advice that I think is not only going to be important to the education students, but I think to anybody who's going to be approaching the job market. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I think that was a great insight as to, a great success story from our Sacred Heart pioneers, but, also just some advice from, someone who's been through that actual process. So, Rebecca, we look forward to being in touch in the future, but thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Good luck to everyone.